Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're going to be diving into something really interesting today. Corporate governance in Taiwan.
Okay.
But with a twist.
A twist.
We're looking specifically at how it all impacts carbon emissions
Interesting.
and climate resilience.
Okay.
So we've got research from Professor Yen-Hui Kuo
Okay.
at National Yunlin University of Science and Technology. And let me tell you, there are some surprises in here
Oh,
that might change the way you think about investing,
really?
especially when it comes to family businesses.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
Fair,
it's
yeah.
really timely,
It is a very timely topic for sure.
especially with that global push
Definitely.
for sustainable business practices. I mean, you've got the Paris Agreement
Right.
setting these ambitious goals
Huge goals.
for emission reductions.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to figure out how businesses can play their part.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we think about businesses, though,
Yeah.
we often picture like big factories.
There are energy companies.
Right.
But what this research really highlights is that even seemingly small decisions made in boardrooms can have this ripple effect
Interesting.
across a whole country's
Wow.
environmental footprint,
I see.
especially in those family-run businesses
Yeah.
common in Taiwan.
Okay.
That's what's so interesting here.
It is. Yeah.
We're going beyond just regulations and looking at the very structure
Right.
of how companies are actually run.
Okay.
So get this.
What?
One of the things that really jumped out at me was
Yeah.
companies where relatives of directors and supervisors
Okay.
hold a ton of shares.
Yeah.
Those companies tend to have higher carbon emissions.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
I know.
That's not what you'd expect.
That's not what I was expecting at all.
No, you would think that they would be more invested in the long-term health of the company,
You would think.
including the environmental impact.
But what often happens is that in these family-run businesses,
Yeah.
there can be this intense
Yeah.
focus on short-term profits. And sometimes that can overshadow long-term sustainability goals.
Yeah. It's kind of a paradox.
Yeah, it really is.
Right.
Yeah.
It really makes you think, like, if you're interested in ethical investing, this is something you really have to look into.
You really have to dig into.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just about a company's marketing
Yeah.
or what they say their values are.
Right.
It's about how they're actually structured.
It's about the structure.
Yeah, and who holds the power.
And who's really in charge?
Yeah, transparency is key.
Absolutely.
Investors need to be able to understand those power dynamics
Yeah.
and how they might be influencing decisions that affect the environment.
For sure. Now, on the flip side, though,
Okay.
the research found something pretty encouraging, too.
Okay, good.
Would you believe that the number of shares held by
Yeah.
company executives,
Okay.
like the CEO, and the CFO is actually linked to lower carbon emissions?
Huh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
I know.
It makes sense when you think about it.
Right.
When those at the top
Yeah.
have such a big personal stake in the company's long-term success,
Right.
they're more likely to make decisions that benefit everyone.
Including the planet.
Yeah,
They're not just thinking about
right.
the next quarter's profits.
No.
They're thinking about the long game.
The long game.
Exactly.
Yeah, and a great example of this from the study
Okay.
is the link they found
Yeah.
between industrial wastewater,
Okay.
recycling rates, and carbon emissions.
Interesting.
So companies with high recycling rates
Okay.
tended to have lower emissions.
Hold on.
Now that might seem
Let me get.
like a strange
It's about more than just the wastewater itself.
connection
That-
at first, but
It's a signal of something deeper
Okay.
going on within the company.
you got it.
Yeah.
Think about what it takes
Okay.
to implement a robust
Wastewater recycling program.
Yeah.
It requires investment in technology, a commitment to efficiency,
Okay.
and probably a culture that values innovation and resource optimization.
So it's like all the things
Yeah.
that come with strong corporate governance.
Those are all hallmarks of strong corporate governance.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kind that often goes hand in hand with a focus on sustainability.
So it's like this domino effect.
Exactly.
Good governance practices lead to a company culture
Yeah.
that values efficiency
Right.
and long-term thinking, and that in turn leads to lower emissions.
They're all interconnected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, I know that this study focused on Taiwanese companies.
Right.
But are these findings something we might see in other parts of the world?
I think it's highly likely.
Yeah.
While the specifics of corporate governance structures might vary from country to country, the underlying principles were pretty universal.
Okay.
The incentive, the motivation.
That drive decision-making are pretty similar.
It makes sense.
No matter where you are.
So if we're looking at a global company, even if they're not based in Taiwan, this research gives us some valuable clues about what to look for in terms of their commitment to sustainability. We can start asking questions like, who are the major shareholders?
Good question.
Do the executives have a significant stake in the company?
Yeah. How do they treat their employees and suppliers?
Oh, excellent questions.
Those are all excellent questions.
Yeah.
And the beauty of this research is that it gives us this new framework for evaluating companies. Beyond just
their stated environmental policies.
We're looking at those deeper structures.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of an onion, uncovering all these hidden connections between corporate governance and an environment.
For sure.
And speaking of hidden connections, this study also uncovered a few things that at first glance seem a bit counterintuitive. For example, they found that a large number of financial institutions involved with a company can actually be linked to higher emissions.
That's right. And while it might seem odd if we consider the history of financial institutions and their, shall we say, delayed focus on sustainability, it begins to make more sense.
So it's not necessarily that having a lot of investors is bad.
No, not inherently.
It's more about where those investors are coming from and what their priorities are.
Precisely. And thankfully, we are starting to see a shift in the financial sector.
That's good.
With more and more investors demanding that their money is put towards environmentally responsible businesses. But there's still a long way to go.
So it sounds like when it comes to evaluating a company's commitment to sustainability, we need to look at the whole picture.
The whole picture.
It's about the governance structure, the company culture, and even the broader financial ecosystem they operate in. And just to be clear, we're talking about correlations here.
That's important to remember. This research provides us with valuable insights. But it's not the whole story.
Of course.
More research is definitely needed to fully understand the complex interplay of all these factors.
Absolutely. But it's a great starting point.
It is a great starting point.
Now, before we move on, I want to touch on one more interesting finding from the study. They looked at the impact of foreign investment on carbon emissions in Taiwanese companies. What did they discover there?
Well, the study found that in general, foreign investment is actually linked to lower carbon emissions.
That's fascinating.
It seems that companies with foreign investors tend to be more environmentally conscious.
Interesting.
At least in the Taiwanese context.
Any idea why that might be?
A couple of reasons come to mind. First, foreign investors often bring with them best practices and standards from their own countries, which might be more stringent than those in Taiwan. And second, they might be more sensitive to global consumer preferences and trends, including the growing demand for sustainable products and services.
So it's like those foreign investors are bringing a fresh perspective. And pushing Taiwanese companies to raise their game.
They're acting as a catalyst for change.
I like that. Okay, so we've talked about some of the big picture findings from this research. Now I'm really curious to hear about some specific examples. Are there any Taiwanese companies that stand out as being particularly good or bad when it comes to aligning their corporate governance with sustainability goals?
There are definitely some shining stars out there. One that comes to mind is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Or TSMC.
I've definitely heard of them.
They're a global leader in semiconductor manufacturing. And those tiny chips are in everything these days.
They are.
Smartphones, computers, you name it.
I wouldn't have guessed that a company making computer chips would be a leader in environmental stewardship.
You might be surprised. TSMC has set some really ambitious targets for reducing their carbon footprint. Including a commitment to using 100% renewable energy by 2050.
That's a big deal.
And remember, they're a major energy consumer, so that's a big deal.
That's impressive. Are they doing anything else?
They've also implemented a comprehensive water conservation program. Which is crucial in a water-stressed country like Taiwan. And here's what I find really admirable. they're not just focusing on their own operations.
Okay.
They're actively working with their suppliers to promote sustainable practices.
So they're recognizing that their environmental impact extends
throughout their entire supply chain.
Beyond their own factory walls.
That's smart.
Yeah, a company's supply chain can often be the source of a lot of hidden emissions and environmental problems.
Exactly.
So TSMC is taking a holistic approach.
I love that.
And I think that's what sets them apart. They're not just trying to check a few boxes.
Right.
They're really integrating sustainability.
It's a core part of how they do business.
Into their core business strategy.
Okay, so TSMC is a great example of a company that's walking the walk. Any other examples?
Another one I'd highlight is Delta Electronics.
Okay.
They're a leading provider of power and thermal management solutions.
Okay.
You know, the kind of stuff that makes our electronic devices run smoothly and efficiently.
I'm starting to see a theme here.
Yeah.
High-tech Taiwanese companies really seem to be stepping up on sustainability.
They really are. What's Delta doing?
Well, for one, they're known for making incredibly energy-efficient products, which are helping businesses and consumers around the world reduce their energy consumption.
That's great.
But they're going even further than that. Delta is starting to implement circular economy principles.
Circular economy now? I've heard that term thrown around.
Into their business model, which is really exciting to see.
But I'm not sure I fully understand it. Could you break it down for us?
Of course, the circular economy is all about moving away from that traditional linear model of take, make, dispose, where we extract resources, create products, use them for a bit, and then throw them away.
And then into the landfill.
Yeah, instead it's about designing products for durability, repairability, and recyclability.
So it's like a closed loop.
The goal is to keep materials in use for as long as possible.
Where resources are constantly being reused and recycled.
Yeah, eliminating waste and pollution.
That sounds amazing, but is it really possible to do that?
It's definitely a challenge.
On a large scale.
But companies like Delta are proving that it can be done.
Okay.
They've established a closed-loop recycling system for their products.
Wow.
Ensuring that valuable materials are recovered and reused rather than ending up in landfills.
No, that's what I call closing the loop.
Right.
It's not only good for the planet, but it probably makes good business sense too.
You're exactly right.
Right. Less waste means lower cost, potentially.
Embracing the circular economy can actually create economic value by turning what was once considered waste into a valuable resource.
I love those kinds of win-win situations.
It's a win-win situation for both the company and the environment.
So both TSMC and Delta Electronics are examples of companies that have really taken sustainability to heart.
Absolutely.
They've made it a core part of their business strategy.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it's not always easy to do that.
No, it's not always easy.
Right. What are some of the challenges that companies face when trying to integrate sustainability into their corporate governance?
There can definitely be upfront costs associated with implementing new technologies and processes.
That makes sense.
For example, shifting to renewable energy or setting up a recycling system can require significant investment.
And I imagine there can be a resistance to change within organizations too.
Absolutely.
People can get set in their ways.
Yeah, people get comfortable with the way things are.
Yeah.
And it can be tough to convince everyone to embrace new ways of doing things.
Right. Even if everyone's on board, measuring and reporting on sustainability performance can be complex.
It can be quite complex.
There's not always a standardized way of doing things.
Right.
And it can be difficult to track progress and compare results.
Yeah, across different companies and industries.
So it sounds like there are quite a few hurdles to overcome.
There are definitely some hurdles.
What advice would you give to companies that are struggling to make progress in this area? What are some key things?
I think the most important thing is leadership.
Okay.
There needs to be a clear commitment.
So it can't just be like a PR stunt or a side project.
From the very top, the CEO, the board of directors.
Right. It needs to be embedded in the company's DNA.
That sustainability is a priority.
Yeah.
It needs to be reflected in the company's mission values and strategic goals.
Okay.
And that commitment needs to be backed up by concrete actions.
So it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Things like setting ambitious sustainability targets, allocating resources to achieve those targets, and holding people accountable for results.
Exactly. And it's also crucial to engage employees
Absolutely.
At all levels of the organization.
Yeah, people are more likely to embrace change when they understand the why behind it.
That makes sense.
And feel like they're part of the solution.
It's about empowering people and making them feel like they're contributing to something meaningful.
Yeah, exactly. And finally, transparency is key.
Okay.
Companies need to be open about their sustainability performance.
Yeah.
Both the good and the bad.
Makes sense.
That means being willing to share data. Be honest about challenges.
Right.
And be open to feedback.
It sounds like honesty and humility are essential ingredients.
Absolutely.
In this recipe for sustainable corporate governance.
Transparency builds trust with stakeholders, investors, customers, employees, communities.
Right.
And it helps to drive continuous improvement.
So we've talked about two really inspiring examples of Taiwanese companies, TSMC and Delta Electronics, that are leading the way. When it comes to integrating sustainability into their corporate governance.
Yeah.
But I'm also aware that not all companies are at that level yet.
That's true.
In fact, I'm guessing there are probably quite a few companies in Taiwan and around the world that are still prioritizing short-term profits.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true.
Over long-term sustainability.
We've seen some encouraging progress, but there's still a long way to go.
Right.
There's still companies that are resistant to change.
Yeah.
That are clinging to old ways of doing things. And that are failing to recognize the risks and opportunities associated with climate change and sustainability.
So what needs to happen to shift that mindset?
Well,
how do we get more companies to embrace sustainability not just as a nice to have?
I think there are a few key levers for change.
Okay.
One is government policy.
So we need governments to step up.
Stronger regulations and incentives.
And create the right conditions for businesses to thrive.
Can create a level playing field and encourage companies to adopt.
While also protecting the environment.
More sustainable practices.
Right.
So alongside policy, we also need consumer pressure.
That's the power of the purse.
As consumers become more aware of the environmental and social impact of their purchasing decisions.
Consumers can vote with their wallets and support companies that align with their values.
They're increasingly demanding products and services from companies that are doing the right thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, there is the role of investors. We've already talked about the rise of ESG investing, where investors are looking beyond just financial returns and considering a company's environmental, social, and governance performance.
Exactly.
So investors are becoming more discerning.
They are.
And demanding more from the companies they invest in.
Absolutely.
That's a really encouraging trend.
It is a very encouraging trend.
And all of these forces, government policy, consumer pressure, and investor activism are starting to converge.
They are.
And create a powerful momentum for change.
A powerful momentum.
It sounds like we're at a tipping point.
It does feel that way.
Where sustainability is no longer a niche concern, but a core business imperative.
Exactly. And for a country like Taiwan, which is so reliant on exports and global trade, this is particularly important. If Taiwanese companies can position themselves as leaders in sustainability, it could give them a real competitive advantage in the global marketplace.
So sustainability is not just the right thing to do.
It's the smart thing to do.
It's also the smart thing to do from a business perspective.
Exactly.
And as we've seen with companies like TSMC and Delta Electronics, it's possible to be both profitable and sustainable.
Absolutely. You don't have to choose between doing well and doing good.
They're proving that you don't have to choose.
You can do both.
Between doing well and doing good.
Yeah.
You can do both.
Now, we've talked a lot about what companies can do to integrate sustainability into their corporate governance. But I think it's also important to acknowledge the role of government policy.
For sure.
What are some of the things that the Taiwanese government is doing to promote sustainability and address climate change?
Well, Taiwan's government has actually been pretty proactive on this front.
They have.
They've set some ambitious goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Ambitious goals.
Including a pledge to achieve net zero emissions by 2050.
That's right in line with the goals of the Paris Agreement, a landmark international accord aimed at limiting global warming.
Absolutely. It's a bold target. And achieving it will require a major transformation.
It's a bold target.
Of Taiwan's economy and society.
It will.
But it's great to see that kind of ambition. So how are they planning to translate those goals into action?
So
what specific policies are they putting in place to support?
One of the key initiatives they're exploring,
this transition to a more sustainable future,
is the development of a carbon pricing mechanism.
Okay, so essentially they're looking at putting a price on carbon emissions.
This could take the form of a carbon tax.
Right.
Where companies are directly charged for their carbon emissions.
To create a financial incentive for companies to reduce their impact.
Or an emissions trading scheme.
Right.
Where companies are given a certain number of emissions permits that they can buy and sell.
That makes a lot of sense. What happens to the revenue generated?
That's a great question.
From these carbon pricing schemes?
Ideally, that revenue would be reinvested in clean energy projects, energy efficiency programs,
right,
and other initiatives that help to further reduce emissions and promote sustainability.
It's like turning a negative into a positive.
It's about creating a virtuous cycle where the costs of pollution are used to fund solutions.
Now, alongside carbon pricing, I imagine there are other policies in play as well.
Absolutely. The government is also heavily promoting renewable energy development.
Okay.
They've set a target of generating 20% of Taiwan's electricity.
Wow.
From renewable sources by 2025.
So we're talking things like subsidies for solar and wind power?
And they're providing a range of financial incentives and support mechanisms.
Tax breaks for clean energy investments.
They get that happen.
That kind of thing.
Exactly. And they're also streamlining the permitting process for renewable energy projects.
Right.
Which can often be a major bottleneck.
Yeah.
They're really trying to create an environment.
It sounds like they're pulling out all the stops.
That's conducive to rapid growth in the renewable energy sector.
But even with all these policies in place, I imagine it's going to take more than just government action.
You're absolutely right.
To achieve those ambitious climate goals.
Addressing climate change requires a whole-of-society approach.
So it's not just the responsibility.
It's not just the responsibility of the government or businesses.
Of the government or businesses?
It's about individuals, communities, and civil society organizations all playing their part.
So it's about changing behaviors and mindsets.
It is.
Across the board.
Yeah. How is the Taiwanese government engaging with the public on this issue?
Right.
They've launched several public awareness campaigns to educate citizens about climate change and promote sustainable lifestyles.
That makes sense.
They're highlighting the co-benefits of climate action.
Right. It's about showing people that sustainability isn't just about sacrifice.
Like cleaner air and water, healthier communities, and new economic opportunities in the green sector.
Right. It's about creating a better future for everyone.
And they're also supporting community-based initiatives. Like tree planting programs, community gardens, energy conservation efforts.
Those are great examples.
And initiatives to reduce waste.
It's about empowering people to take action in their own communities.
Exactly.
And become part of the solution.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked a lot about what's happening within Taiwan.
Right.
But I know it's also important to consider the global context.
It is.
Taiwan is a small island nation that's heavily reliant on international trade. So global trends and events must have a significant impact.
They do.
On its economy and, by extension, its environmental performance. What are some of the key global trends?
One major trend we've already touched on is the growing demand for sustainable products and services from consumers around the world.
It's like a global shift in consumer consciousness.
People are becoming more aware of the environmental and social impact of their purchases.
And that must be creating a lot of new opportunities for Taiwanese companies.
And they're willing to pay a premium for products that are produced ethically and sustainably.
Well, they're ahead of the curve on sustainability.
Absolutely. Taiwan has a reputation for being a high-quality manufacturer. And now they have the opportunity to build on that reputation. By becoming a leader in sustainable manufacturing.
And on the flip side, I imagine it's putting pressure on companies that are lagging behind.
It could be a major selling point for their products in the global marketplace.
To catch up, if they want to remain competitive, they're going to have to adapt.
Exactly. The global marketplace is becoming increasingly discerning.
It's no longer a niche concern. It's a core business imperative.
And companies that ignore sustainability are doing so at their own peril.
Now, another key global trend we've discussed is the rise of ESG investing.
Right.
Can you remind us again what ESG stands for and why it's becoming such a powerful force?
Of course.
Okay.
ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. It's an investment approach that goes beyond just looking at a company's financial performance.
So it's about looking at the whole picture.
And considers its impact on the environment, its relationships with its employees.
Not just the bottom line.
And the communities it operates in, and the quality of its corporate governance.
And why is ESG investing becoming so popular?
Well, for one thing, there's a growing body of evidence that suggests that companies with strong ESG performance tend to be more financially successful in the long run.
So it's not just about doing good, it's also about doing well.
They're better at managing risks, attracting and retaining talent, and building trust with customers and investors.
It's about recognizing that sustainability and profitability are not mutually exclusive.
Exactly.
In fact, they can be mutually reinforcing.
It can be.
And another reason for the rise of ESG investing is that investors, especially younger generations, are increasingly demanding that their investments align with their values.
They want to see their money being used.
It's about investing with your conscience.
To make a positive impact on the world.
And that's a powerful trend that's not going away anytime soon.
Absolutely. And all of these global trends are creating both challenges and opportunities for Taiwan.
Right.
It's a critical moment for the country to decide how it wants to position itself in this emerging green economy.
It sounds like Taiwan is at a crossroads.
It is at a crossroads.
It can choose to embrace these trends and become a leader in sustainable development, or it can risk falling behind and losing its competitive edge.
Exactly. It's a choice that all countries are facing.
Right.
But for Taiwan, with its unique strengths, technology and manufacturing, the potential rewards are particularly high.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into corporate governance and climate change in Taiwan, I think the big question we're left with is this. Can Taiwan leverage its corporate governance structures, its innovative spirit, and its government policies to truly become a global model for sustainability?
It's a fascinating question.
It is.
And I think the answer is a resounding yes.
I like that.
Taiwan has all the ingredients it needs to succeed.
Yeah.
A strong industrial base, a talented workforce, a government that's committed to sustainability, and a growing awareness among businesses and citizens of the importance of this issue.
It's about harnessing all of those strengths.
It is.
And working together to create a future that's both prosperous and sustainable.
A future we can all get excited about.
And that's a future I think we can all get excited about. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
On this deep dive into the fascinating world of corporate governance and climate change in Taiwan.
Yeah.
We hope you've learned something new.
I hope so.
And that you're feeling inspired to take action in your own lives.
Me too.
Remember, even small changes can make a big difference.
They really can.
When we all work together.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that sustainability and profitability are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they can be mutually reinforcing.
Exactly. And another reason for the rise of ESG investing is that investors, especially younger generations, are increasingly demanding that their investments align with their values.
They want to see their money being used to make a positive impact on the world.
It's about investing with your conscience. And that's a powerful trend that's not going away anytime soon.
Absolutely. And all of these global trends are creating both challenges and opportunities for Taiwan.
Right. It's a critical moment for the country to decide how it wants to position itself in the emerging green economy.
It is at a crossroads. It can choose to embrace these trends and become a leader in sustainable development, or it can risk falling behind and losing its competitive edge.
Right. It's a choice that all countries are facing. But for Taiwan, with its unique strengths in technology and manufacturing, the potential rewards are particularly high. So as we wrap up our deep dive into corporate governance and climate change in Taiwan, I think the big question we're left with is this: can Taiwan leverage its corporate governance structures, its innovative spirit, and its government policies to truly become a global model for sustainability?
It's a fascinating question, and I think the answer is a resounding yes. Taiwan has all the ingredients it needs to succeed: a strong industrial base, a talented workforce, a government that's committed to sustainability, and a growing awareness among businesses and citizens of the importance of this issue.
It's about harnessing all of those strengths and working together to create a future that's both prosperous and sustainable, and that's a future I think we can all get excited about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of corporate governance and climate change in Taiwan. We hope you've learned something new and that you're feeling inspired to take action in your own lives. Remember, even small changes can make a big difference when we all work together.
Absolutely.